remember the night of my 21st birthday. That was the first time I died.
Jackie Estacado is not having a good birthday. His latest job for the Mafia went sideways, he's been shot at, narrowly survived a car crash, it turns out his paranoid Uncle Paulie put a hit out on him.
And the prom's tomorrow!
But the worst thing by far has to be the fact that Jackie is now the latest host of a primordial evil known only as the Darkness.
It's a fucking 21st birthday for you, huh?
Released in 2007 for the Xbox 360 and PS3, The Darkness is a first-person shooter from Starbreeze Studios, a Swedish developer responsible for the likes of Enclave, both Chronicles of Riddick games, and Brothers: A Tale of Two Sons. Also crap like that time EA was convinced that people wanted Syndicate rebooted as an FPS, but today's game is firmly on the good side of Starbreeze's output. Not that I always held a positive opinion of The Darkness. In fact, I remember despising it as a teenager.
Like 20 years ago, I would have put your head in a half Nelson, twisted it around, saying each letter of the alphabet on every turn, and when I reached the first letter of my true love's name, that would be the lovely Elizabeth, I would yank your head clean off and roll it down the pike like a bowling ball. Okay. All right, here we go.
The gunplay felt off, I could barely see anything without cranking the brightness on my TV so high that it ruined those vaunted lighting effects. And I just could not stop dying. Ironically, I would wind up enjoying the PC version of The Darkness 2 far more when I got it with a bundle of a bunch of other 2K games. As my skill level at FPSs generally plummets to the core of the earth when I play with a controller, I began to assume that at least part of my hatred of the first game came from fumbling with the PS3's thumbsticks, so I decided I would give the first game another chance when it finally got ported to PC.
2,000 years later.
Fine, I'll grab the 360 version since it's playable on the Xbox One and it lets me stream to my PC. That way I don't have to run HDMI cables across my damn house in order to capture the footage. Plus, it doesn't make me buy the newest console in order to uncap the frame rate in remote play. Sony. Though there was the occasional bit of artifacting that I couldn't do anything about. Still worth it to not have to move my entire setup in order to record a single game. Based on the Top Cow comic of the same name created by David Wohl, Mark Silvestri, and Garth Ennis? Again? How many times am I going to cover a video game based off of a comic created by Garth Ennis? Off the top of my head, at least twice more. However, unlike with Shadow Man, I'm not too familiar with the comics, nor have I ever cared all that much to read them. I have read a bit of its sister series Witchblade, but the late Michael Turner's art style really isn't my cup of tea, and I found the story itself to be rather dull for a premise as cool as Witchblade. Considering how long both it and The Darkness have stuck around though, I'm clearly in the minority here. Either way, familiarity with the source material isn't required to enjoy Starbreeze's game, as their take on The Darkness is a reimagining of the original comic book, with elements apparently taken from several different story arcs. Moreover, the more comic booky elements, like Jackie's 90s as all hell darkness costume, have been excised in favor of a more stripped down, gritty interpretation of The Darkness as a crime thriller meets supernatural horror tale, ironically making it feel closer in spirit to Garth Ennis' better supernatural stories like Preacher and his tragically short run on Shadow Man than the actual Darkness comic written by Ennis. In fact, the game starts off by keeping its supernatural cards so close to its chest that you'd be forgiven for thinking that you were playing a simple Mafia-themed FPS. That being said, it's good that things do take a turn for the supernatural because, wow, the shooting in this game has the exact feel that I loathe in console FPSs. It's not bad per se, yet all the effort put into the sound and visuals of the weapons goes to waste thanks to the weak sauce ragdolls that ruin the impact. Most of the time it feels like I aim, get blinded by the muzzle flash thanks to that mid-2000s bloom, and when I can see again, the enemy's already dead on the ground. This can work in slower-paced shooters with simulation elements like Stalker to ensure every firefight is a tense affair, but I find this to be an unnecessary application of realism when it comes to more typical shooters like The Darkness. This is the kind of game where I should feel like an unstoppable badass. Yet even after getting those darkness powers, all it takes is a single mistake and Jackie's down for the count again.
I offer no escape.
and now I need to go change my underwear. Those deaths are far more frequent than they need to be as well, because Jackie refuses to move at any pace faster than a brisk trot. Not even with the NYPD bearing down on him with an attack helicopter does he consider it worth his time to actually run. Everyone else can, so it's not as if this is a universe that never discovered the concept of sprinting. So what? Is Jackie too cool for it? Is he worried about ruining his nice shoes? Does the darkness actually weigh him down? Now that I've said it out loud, I'm kind of curious about that last one. Do heart-munching demonic abominations add mass to the possessed?
Questions for later.
The weapon system irritates me to no end as well. Instead of picking up each weapon one time and magically vacuuming up the magazines afterwards, Jackie stuffs every pistol and SMG he can get his hands on into his jacket in his best impression of Meryl Streep. To top it off, each gun either has a randomized ammo count or the game tracks what's left in the magazine after the enemy dies. I don't know for certain because the damned minimalist UI means that I only ever got a quick flash of the ammo count when I swapped between weapon types. Your immersion can go fornicate itself with a rusty pitchfork if it means that I can't consult my ammo count at all times.
Don't question our system of justice, my little pinko friend.
This creates a situation where there's no real point in discussing the different weapon types because they all handle about the same and do the same damage. What's the point of preferring one pistol over another when I'll have to toss it aside for a new one before the next combat encounter is over? The guns that you can't dual wield do fare a little better in that I can actually reload them, making me wonder why we couldn't have done the same with the dual wield weapons, but that doesn't suddenly make the shooting itself feel any better. Fortunately, as you unlock more of the darkness's powers, combat steadily becomes more engaging. For starters, the darkness is only effective in, darkness.
Oh, that's why they call it that.
That means sticking to the shadows and shooting out every last light you come across. While draped in shadow, Jackie gains a sort of shield on top of the regenerating health you'd expect from this time, which can be tracked by checking the eyes of your demonic shoulder eels. I love the stupid things that talking about video games lets me say. Step out into the light when they're out, and you'll hear a sizzling noise that indicates your darkness power is steadily draining.
Oh, something smells delicious!
You can recover said power by either dipping back into the shade, or get an instant top-off by feeding the hearts of dead enemies to the darkness. This game certainly isn't for the faint of heart. Faint of heart. Faint of... Devour enough hearts and your darkness level will increase. It wasn't too clear to me if it does anything outside of boosting your pool of darkness energy, but that alone is helpful as it means you can take more hits before your health starts dropping. Plus, it lets you use your other powers more frequently. First is Creeping Dark, where you take direct control of one of Jackie's killer demon eels. I never found much use for this outside of unlocking doors from the other side, and those moments were infrequent enough that I'd forget it was something I could even do. It's a disappointment of an introductory power that doesn't really build hype for what else the darkness can do. Then the second power you get makes up for that and then some by being the most consistently useful one in the whole game. Demon Arm sends out a tendril that instantly kills enemies if it connects, but more importantly, it can be used to break lights at little to no cost to your darkness power. The amount of ammo I save thanks to this power and its wide auto-aim is incalculable. Aiming at very tiny targets with an imprecise method like a thumbstick is the stuff of nightmares for me. Following that are the underwhelming darkness guns. This seems like an awesome concept at first. Finally, a unique weapon built around Jackie's powers. However, you quickly realize that whether you use the rapid-fire one on the right or the powerful sonic boom of the one on the left, the darkness guns are rarely worth the trade-off of losing your shield in the midst of a firefight. They're more effective in 2 chapters for spoiler reasons, but even there I came to prefer the normal firearms anyways. Finally, we have what is for all intents and purposes the darkness's ultimate, Black Hole. It does exactly what the name implies, summoning a localized black hole that pulls in and crushes all nearby enemies at the cost of using up all or almost all of your darkness power. Unlike with the darkness guns, this is well worth it if used correctly. The majority of the game's firefights take place in close quarters, making it possible to wipe out a whole group of enemies without firing a single shot.
I banish you to the black hole.
While those are the 4 powers you'll always have on hand once unlocked, Jackie is also able to summon minions called Darklings out of pits like this. The Berserker and Kamikaze will mostly wind up being used for clearing the way for you rather than combat because of their dumb as bricks AI. They'll make a beeline for the nearest enemy, even if it means walking right out into the light, dropping their health faster than if they'd eaten at Hardee's.
Oh, that really isn't very nice of you, you know. If you had any real friends, you wouldn't be such a grump.
Gunner Darklings are better, being ranged and all, but, yeah. Still pretty fucking stupid. The handiest Darklings, the Light Killers, naturally don't become available to you until near the end of the game. Well after you have enough darkness power to spam the demon arm at all nearby light sources. Still, they do save you time when it comes to turning out the lights. Really though, the best part of the Darklings comes from them being the main source of humor in the darkness. If your chosen Darkling survives the fight, they'll wander over to the bodies and make any number of dumb quips as they dig in for their share of the meal,
My regards to your family.
or occasionally pee on them like a dog with a fire hydrant.
Now the flowers will grow.
It's stupid, yes, but in a game as dour and depressing as the Darkness, it's a welcome touch of levity. Typically, this would be about the point I talk about the level design before moving on to the presentation, but with today's game, I feel that they're too interconnected to discuss separately. The Darkness is laser focused on immersing the player in its version of New York City, which transposes the crime and decay of New York in the 1970s into the then modern day. Though things like Jackie's pager and the payphones everywhere did still cause it to feel dated even in 2007. Looking back on it 17 years later, however, what was distractingly outdated then has transformed into a charming time capsule of the rapid technological shifts of the 2000s that further draws the player in. Then it goes and breaks from the contemporary trend of chaining together a series of superlinear, bordering on rail shooter levels by including Deus Ex-style semi-open hub areas with side missions to do and hidden bonuses to collect. You aren't given a map or objective markers either. You have to check street signs and the sidewalk city maps everyone had to consult before we all had smartphones in our pockets. This is what makes the choice of hub areas over a vast open world an excellent decision. Had the Darkness been a true open-world sandbox game, needing to memorize every location would have been infuriating. With a handful of smaller hubs, though, they're just the right size that, should you get lost, you won't have to spend half an hour backtracking to the correct location. Which is good, because even without getting lost, you'll wind up backtracking through these areas a lot if you plan on completing all the side missions. The side missions themselves won't blow your mind or anything, and the rewards for completing them are nothing more than phone numbers to call on the nearest payphone to unlock bonus content. And yet, their presence helps ground the fantastical story Jackie finds himself caught up in. Things like the mundanity of helping a busker get his favorite spot back reminds the player how ordinary everything else in this setting is. It quietly establishes the Darkness itself as a monster intruding upon a gritty HBO crime drama in a similar vein to The Predator upending the typical Schwarzenegger action film. Except here, you're the horror that everyone fears. This extends to the Darkness's clever inversion of the typical horror concept of shadows and pitch-black rooms being something to fear into being the source of the protagonist's powers. Shadow Man toyed with a similar idea several years prior, but never pulled the trigger on it in the way that the Darkness does. I mean, it sort of did with its sequel, Tuek and Coming, but no, I'll save that for October. Not to mention that a premise like this is perfect for showing off all the fancy new lighting techniques that developing for these next-gen systems enabled. You get to better immerse your players in your world, and show off your programming chops. Everybody wins! Also, I greatly appreciate the display options you're given at the start. Being able to select a less washed out display, even if I think the one I went with was maybe a bit too yellow at times, was a blessing for folks like me who struggle enough to pick out enemies at a distance without everything being some shade of gray, brown, or dark blue. On the audio end of things, look, the sound design does its job adeptly in being appropriately atmospheric, but we have a runaway MVP here that is what will stick with you long after you're done playing, and that is Mike Patton as the Darkness. Yes, Faith No More and Mr. Bungle's weird-ass vocalist, and he gives one of the most terrifying, soul-shriveling performances in video game history.
They burn Jackie. All the thorns. Such delicate torture of the body and soul.
I haven't been this scared of a demonic entity since Brad Dourif in The Exorcist 3. His character in that was pretty scary too. The voice, or should I say voices, Mike Patton uses for the Darkness is perfect. Sometimes it sounds like an otherworldly beast that can't naturally speak any human tongue and has to instead bark out noises close enough to what it means.
She rapes of innocence.
Then other times it speaks in a smooth, mocking tone dripping with sadism.
Remembering something, Jackie?
In other words, the darkness sounds exactly how I imagine a demon would sound.
Human flesh festers.
Though Patton's performance is the linchpin of the whole thing if you ask me, the remainder of the voice cast do an admirable job of keeping up with him. This is especially impressive considering the number of screen actors with no prior voice acting credits. Until the day I die, I will continue to beat the drum of screen acting and voice acting being two similar yet separate skill sets. And while I will always prefer career voice actors over stunt casting a screen actor, HBO vets Kirk Acevedo and Lauren Ambrose put far more effort into their performances as Jackie and his girlfriend Jenny than I would have expected.
Are you on your way now?
I'll be over as soon as I can. Now do me a favor. Just don't open the door till you know it's me.
I'm a big girl, mystery man. I can take care of myself. I'll see you when you get here.
Hey, humor me just this once. Okay? Now I gotta run. Bye.
Though it does create a weird contrast between their more restrained performances and Dwight Schultz's cartoonish portrayal of the main antagonist, Uncle Paulie. Schultz does a good job, mind you. Unlike Lieutenant Barclay in Star Trek, he's playing a character much closer to himself, a paranoid loon that sees enemies everywhere he looks.
There's nothing wrong with me, there's something wrong with you, there's something wrong with me, I hope it's underneath the fish.
On his own, Uncle Paulie is a perfectly fine hammy villain. I just find it weird to have all these grounded performances from prestige TV stars and career character actors, then have Dwight Schultz play Paulie with a New York accented version of his Mung Doll voice.
I hope you took a good look at the sky today, because it's the last moment of peace you'll ever have in your very short and very miserable rest of your pointless fucking existence.
Okay, geez. Sorry for thinking farts are funny.
In comparison, I can give Mike Patton a pass for devouring the scenery with every word uttered, as it makes the darkness feel that much more like an unnatural presence in an otherwise mundane setting. However, that Paulie feels more like a one-off Batman the Animated Series villain than a real person is more a problem with the voice direction than the performance itself, and it doesn't detract from the story enough to be a major issue. Of course, it would take a lot to detract from a story this good. The story of the darkness is why I chose to do this video. I feel that a lot of my videos as of late have been games that can be summed up as, the story's nothing special, but that gameplay though. The darkness is almost the polar opposite of that. A game with good enough gameplay, but a fantastic story. What could have easily been an excuse plot of Jackie had a hit put out on him by his Uncle Paulie and now he has to shoot his way through an army of goons with the help of his demon powers, instead plays out as a gut-wrenching tragedy which possesses far greater maturity and emotional depth than the vast majority of shooters from this era. Though you can occasionally pick a dialogue option, Jackie isn't a blank slate for the player to impose themselves onto. This is best exemplified in the darkness's clever use of loading screens to provide insight into Jackie's thought process as he narrates in a black void to an unseen audience.
Listen, the best way to my Uncle Paulie's heart is through his ribcage with a meat cleaver. Failing that, you screw up his distribution and let the Chicago people collect on him.
With the entire narrative framed as a story Jackie is relaying to someone else, this is a brilliant way to keep that idea in the player's mind throughout the game. Jackie's monologues are where Kirk Acevedo's performance really shines, and elevates Jackie from the generic brooding anti-hero New York edition characterization that it might have otherwise come off as.
I love this subway station. Uncle Paulie brought me down here on vacation one time. Count the trains. Best 2 days me and him ever spent together.
Jackie Estacado is a fundamentally broken man in deep need of a therapist, who works as a hitman for his uncle because he lacks the self-esteem to believe himself capable of being better. In Jackie's mind, the soul-saving grace of his awful life is his girlfriend Jenny, the one normal presence in a social circle otherwise comprised solely of mob associates. Jenny is a caring and supportive woman who grew up in the same orphanage as Jackie. Her one flaw is wanting to see the best in others while living in the darkness's cynical world.
I'm sure it's gonna be okay. It's been like 9 years since he took you home from the orphanage. Your Uncle Paulie likes you, doesn't he?
In what could very easily be the last time they ever see each other, it's possible for Jackie to work up the courage to admit to Jenny what he really does for a living, and she instantly assumes he's joking.
There's something else wrong and you're hiding it with some kind of weird-ass story you just made up. Hey, come on. It's your birthday and I've got a new apartment. Let's take one day off from fucked up.
This whole sequence in her apartment has been praised to hell and back over the years, and with good reason. In one scene, Starbreeze uses all of those little immersive touches to craft the perfect calm before the storm in a way only a video game could. Sitting on the couch with Jenny as you watch To Kill a Mockingbird on TV is one of the most realistic, down-to-earth scenes in any video game, period. With hardly a word spoken between the two, The Darkness demonstrates the sheer power of show don't tell, as it presents a more believable relationship in one scene than Gears of War did in 2 games of Dom talking about his wife. And it's entirely optional. There's nothing stopping you from getting up and leaving immediately. Yet you feel, or at least I felt, a sense of guilt at the thought of just walking away. You know the moment you walk out that door, it'll be time to go to war with Polly, and things will never be the same again. Shit's about to hit the fan real soon, so this seems to be a good point to throw up the spoiler warning. I tend to think of the twist in The Darkness being common knowledge at this point, but just in case, skip ahead to hear for my conclusion if you don't want the rest of the plot spoiled. Uncle Polly clearly had a few screws loose to begin with.
You know you've been a pain in my ass since the day I met you, Jackie. Pissing and moaning about the way I do business. Well, you need to learn who's calling the shots in this family.
However, Polly reaches a new level of madness when he bombs the orphanage that Jackie and Jenny grew up in, killing God only knows how many children and staff, all to spite his nephew.
They're all dead, Jackie. So I want you to think of me. And never forget, this was all your fault.
Worse still, Jenny going to the orphanage to help out however she can gives the corrupt police captain Eddie Schroet
It ain't Eddie, you fucking moron. It's Captain Schroet.
the chance to abduct Jenny. This leads to a dramatic showdown in the burnt-out remains of the orphanage, with Polly holding Jenny at gunpoint, and the darkness restrains Jackie, forcing him to watch as the love of his life is murdered by his uncle.
Oh, what did they do to Jenny? She was a bird. This is freedom. Where are you going? Jackie, this is not your time.
In a normal world, this would be the end of the road, but the darkness doesn't give up on its host that easily. Jackie awakes in what initially appears to be a World War I battlefield, only there's something wrong with the German soldiers attacking him. Their faces are distorted, monstrous, and they'll stand back up over and over again until Jackie rips out their hearts.
There's no explanation for what's happened to me. Maybe this place isn't a place at all. Maybe it's a state of mind. I mean, I'm supposed to be dead. I remember you. I remember the gunshot. I think I'm in hell.
But that might have been a more comforting place. This nightmarish no man's land is the darkness's realm. The soldiers in this place are its victims, forced to endlessly fight and die because that's what the darkness wills. And it's where Jackie learns the true power of his curse from the man who first brought the darkness into their family line, Anthony Estacado. The darkness is passed from father to son at conception, whereupon the darkness will lie in wait until the son's 21st birthday to manifest. If the current wielder is unable to control it, eventually the darkness will devour their soul and make its way to another host. But Anthony thinks he's found a way after centuries of torment inside the darkness to end the curse once and for all. Or, failing that, allow Jackie to keep the darkness under control. But they'll have to fight their way into the heart of no man's land, into the castle where the core of the darkness resides. Halfway through the plan, though, Jackie is pulled back into the living world by the darkness.
I fixed your broken head, ball. What time? passed my test. No more dreaming.
Reckoning that he is pretty much immortal now, Jackie decides to seek out his vengeance on Polly, on Schroet, and every motherfucker stupid or unlucky enough to get in his way. With help from the older members of the family sickened by how Polly runs things, Jackie swaps between tearing down his uncle's empire brick by brick and hunting down Schroet, eventually taking the sadistic cop with him in a massive explosion. This leads into a two-part climax, first against the darkness itself, and then against Polly. Back in No Man's Land, Jackie and Anthony are able to break into the castle this time around, though it comes at the cost of Anthony's life. The actual fight with the darkness is a weird one, and I wound up having to look up what I was supposed to do. What you have to do is fend off the waves of darklings it summons and do your best to avoid the black holes before charging straight at the darkness and absorbing it. Narratively, it's a fitting way to play out this fight, but either Jenny's ghostly hints of encouragement were too vague, or I'm too dense.
Both is good.
With that over, the darkness agrees to serve Jackie while warning him,
"With each life you take, I grow closer to owning your soul."
This is made crystal clear during the climactic assault on Polly's island hideout. The sun has risen, but an eclipse is coming, and the more the moon blots out the sun, the stronger Jackie becomes. Then he starts blacking out, briefly waking up to scenes of brutal carnage with no control over his own body. By the end, you realize exactly what's going to happen to Jackie once he's dealt with Polly. There's no triumph here. A man who has nothing left to live for will cast aside his very soul in order to take his vengeance. When you at last corner Polly at the top of the lighthouse, the fact that the game leaves you in control makes you think for a moment that maybe you can make Jackie walk away with a shred of humanity and leave Polly as a dead man walking after the devastation of his business. But there is no choice here for you, because there's no choice here for Jackie. And with an unsatisfying, anticlimactic pull of the trigger, the darkness swallows Jackie whole.
Now you are mine. Mine.
And that was the end of the line.
But before the last shred of his soul is consumed, Jackie awakes on a park bench, his head in Jenny's lap. She tells him that they've been given a moment to say goodbye. But only a moment. All that a worn-down, mentally broken Jackie can do is tearfully confess how much he misses her and beg Jenny to stay with him. Once their time is up, Jenny leaves us all with one final cryptic line before the credits roll.
You have to wake up now.
It's such a powerful, brilliantly acted finale that leaves on an open-ended note which I believe to be as hopeful or as depressing as the player chooses to interpret it. Okay, so the mere existence of a sequel makes it clear that this isn't the end of Jackie's story, but that didn't lessen the impact of this ending one bit for me. And remember, I finished The Darkness 2 well before I gave this another chance. This ending effortlessly balances tragedy and hopelessness without ever becoming so bleak that you stop caring.
You're not here anymore. I'm trying to remember you, but all I get is this stupid shit. Like your wallpaper, smell in your hallway. Even my mind is fighting me.
I'm happy that I decided to give The Darkness another chance all these years later. Though I remain unimpressed with the shooting and find that Jackie's darkness powers only boost the gameplay loop to tolerable levels, the stunning commitment to immersion and storytelling more than make up for these shortcomings. A richly detailed setting, compelling characters played by actors giving it their all, Mike Patton being an utter terror as the titular Darkness, and incredible writing that transforms what could have been a cheesy horror action story into an emotionally charged Greek tragedy that puts many of its contemporaries to shame. What more could it offer beyond gameplay improvements and toning down the damn bloom?
Wait a minute. I'm blind! No! Help! No!
just too bad that this was Starbreeze's last truly great AAA title. 2009's Assault on Dark Athena was such a short experience that they included the entirety of Escape from Butcher Bay to make up for it. Syndicate was a genre shift nobody asked for, and I disliked Payday even before Payday 3. Their one undeniable success after The Darkness was 2013's indie surprise, Brothers: A Tale of Two Sons. But then the director of Brothers and meme in human form, Joseph Fares,
Fuck the Oscars, you know? Fuck the Oscars! Fuck you!
took several of the staff with him to Hazelight Studios. So even when Starbreeze won in the 2010s, they lost.
Fuck you!
That bit of sadness aside, The Darkness is absolutely 110%, insert third overly positive word here, worth your time and money. Physical copies remain pretty cheap on eBay for the time being, and the 360 version is still available digitally on the Xbox Store as a backwards compatible title, though a remaster would certainly be welcome. Perhaps one that finally makes this playable on PC? Oh yes, I forgot that Take-Two can't even be bothered with their big money franchises, much less their other titles. This is what happens when you let a guy with a name like Strauss Zelnick run your company, people.
That was the first time I died.
That's all for now. This video was a bit of an experiment to see if you all had any interest in me discussing games from the 7th generation of consoles. Would you like to see me cover more games from this time? Would anyone be interested in seeing a video on The Darkness 2? Does the realization that kids who were born the same year the PS3 and Wii came out are now going to college make you feel so old and in the way like it does for me? Let me know in the comments, and in the meantime, I gotta get back to work on the next part in my journey to discuss every Suikoden game with Suikoden 4. I'll see you then.